Hey there, everyone. This is Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore, bringing you my music masterclass from on the road, as it were, on location at where am I? I'm at Carson Elementary School, where my wife Kari teaches music, and this is where she's doing all her musicals, the big musicals, the culmination of the year's stuff. It's been just a lot of fun. I've been watching these, recording them, and all, and that's where we are today. So I want to thank people for being here. It's going to be kind of a, slightly disorienting in here, but let's all just enjoy what's going on here, and with any luck, we'll actually get to see some of the students or hear some of the students in a minute because they just finished the show, and I think they're going to actually come over here and sing their school song in a little bit, which will be a lot of fun. So, and actually, I should make sure that I have that music up, right, so that you can see that music. So let me make sure I have that music ready to go. Carson Cougars is, I think, how I'm going to find the score. Okay, so here we go. A couple different versions. I'll just put the one from my site up here. So this is a song that that my wife wrote for the school, and it's just a fun school song. So hold on a second, and I'm gonna see if the students are ready here. Yeah, come on over. Okay. So we're gonna have some singing here in a second here, yeah. So want everyone to, and so there's like this whole legal thing of releases to appear on camera that we're not going to worry about. So you'll just be hearing the music here, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go here. So this is the sheet music here. I'm not going to be playing the sheet music itself. I'm going to be kind of doing my thing from it, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So, shall we try this? Let me get my chat up here and make sure that everything's going okay here. All right, let's try it. Thank you so much, Carson Cougars, for participating here. It's great having you. Your show was fantastic. I loved it. So, so they're just finishing up with their class here, and they did their show. They did Schoolhouse Rock is what they did. If y'all are my age about, you might remember that series of little cartoons that they did on TV back when we were growing up, educational cartoons that were songs about grammar, songs about math, songs about history, and so forth, right? Probably only in the United States they they did these, but I don't know, maybe some of you have seen some of these. They're really clever ways of introducing kids to some concepts through music on TV. It was just brilliantly done. So, so thanks everyone for the comments, and I'll pass them along as well. So yeah, I'm just going to kind of talk about a few different things here because I'm really pleased that I'm able to have some semblance of my normal setup here. When I say some semblance of it, it's not my exact normal setup, but it's in the ballpark. So yeah, I'm just going to talk about a few things here and see what we can learn from them. So since we just played this song, I'm going to talk about what was involved with this piece here. So when Kari wrote this, she just wrote kind of a melody and, melody and lyrics with chords, and she had her own way of playing it on the piano, and then we wanted to kind of adapt what she played to create sheet music. And so that's what we did, and it goes... right? And that's kind of how the piece kind of started. And then over time, she kind of morphed how she played it. And then when she would have me accompany, it would morph that much more into, other variations of that sort of thing. Now, some of you might have seen then. So yeah, this is what it is. And it's a very simple song harmonically and melodically, right? Because it's designed for kids to be able to sing. So, cars and cougars, da, 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 da. And that's the range of the song, right? It sits in a fairly small range, which helps make it singable. And the chords are simple. It's 1 chords and 5 chords, and in the bridge, it goes to we show respect, going to the 4 chord. It's a real classic kind of pop type of chord progression and arrangement and all. So it's just a really effective piece. The kids love singing this thing. So what I also want to do, though, is show you the arrangement that I made for this thing. And I did show this, a year or so ago. I don't remember exactly when. So there was a saxophone quartet. I'm going to take this mask off now. There was a saxophone quartet that came and performed. It was the Air Force Academy has they have a series of bands in Colorado Springs, which is like an hour from here. And so they had their saxophone quartet come up and do a performance here. And I took the liberty of arranging that school song for the quartet. And I believe if I press play right now, we're going to hear that. And if not, I'll find it on YouTube. But I think I set it up. Now, that's obviously MuseScore, right? That is not the real recording. So I need to find that one, I guess, on YouTube. Carson Cougars. And I'll find a very, here we go. There's the saxophone quartet version. So let's just hear this version. And there you have that. So yeah, I created that arrangement. We worked it out. Oh, yeah. Look at that. He's got the same setup as me, almost. Anyhow, in my arrangement, I did a lot of reharmonization of it, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But I'm also going to talk about it in the context of the contest piece and the harmonizations there, because it's an interesting some parallels there. And Gijs, yes, I saw your piece there, and just so you all know, my plan is to not talk about submissions as they come in, but to wait until the end of the month, when I think I said, the month of May. I don't think I put a particular date on it, but we'll call it May 31st. So I think I'll probably wait until the end of the month to give feedback on things, unless I change my mind. But right now, anyhow, that's what I'm thinking. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about some of the things that I did in adapting this song. So for instance, the original version really was just these few chords, right? F, and then a 2, no, not even a 2, sorry, a 1 chord in second inversion, right? So just basically a classic kind of phrase of 1 and then 5 with what's called a cadential 6/4 chord. This is all theory stuff that you can learn about in my harmony course or from any theory class, really. But that's the basic thing. And what I wanted to do, and that phrase then happens again 4 bars later, and then it happens again at the end of the chorus, so it happens, we get to hear that phrase several times. So what I wanted to do was have different harmonizations of that phrase. And so one version I remember was, so in my language, first of all, think about my way of talking about harmony. I often talk about breaking things into 2-bar phrases and journeys from one place to another. This thing starts on the 1 chord, and now here, that chord there, the 1 chord in second inversion, this is a special chord. And I have to laugh because the textbook that I taught my music theory class at the university where I teach, they notate this. So this is a 1 chord in second inversion. But they make the correct observation that it's really just about some extra notes on a 5 chord. It's really the 5 chord with some notes borrowed from the 1 chord. So they actually notate that using a 5, and then they'll write 6/4 and 5/3, kind of a figured bass kind of a thing. So they notate that as a 5/6/4, not 1/6/4. And they say older textbooks call it 1/6/4, and I kind of made a big deal about, well, I guess I'm old then, because that's how I call it. So to me, this is 1/6/4, but it is true that functionally, it's functioning like a 5 chord, right? It's acting, it's just prolonging that 5, right? That's a very classic thing. Classical music, a lot of pop music, etc., uses that. My background as a jazz person, though, if I want to take a 5 chord and expand it some, I'm going to expand it to a 2/5, right? So that's what I did. 2, 5, 1. And that's what I made it. At least sometimes. I think in my arrangement I used the inversion once or twice, and I used the... so in fact, if we just look at this, it's all what we have here. This is a G7 chord. You have to, untranspose what we're looking at here. But it's a 2 chord, a dominant 2 chord, so a secondary dominant, right? And then going on, next phrase. So it's 1, 2, 3, and then a diminished chord, sharp 1 diminished, going to 2 again. So I've used, in those first 8 bars, the diatonic chords, I've used secondary dominants, and I've used the diminished approach, F sharp diminished, as a way of approaching G minor. This half-step approach into diatonic chords is a big part of the language. So then, going on, let me just keep playing a little bit. So again, it's again this passing diminished chord, or diminished approach chord as I call it. This is a 2 to 5 to 1 in D minor. So it's a secondary dominant, but more than that, it's a secondary 2-5, right? So this, and it's that, right? I think, oh no, I didn't do that. I just did this. I think when I play it, I do this. This is this idea of a diminished chord over the chord that it's eventually going to resolve to. In other words, you play the root of the chord you want to resolve to while putting the diminished chord on top of it. You might recognize that as the end of that phrase in Bach's Toccata and Fugue, right? That is just a sound that's been around forever. This diminished chord sitting on top of a pedal tone. I think I'm playing that right, and I think I'm in the right key. But I mean, obviously those aren't exactly the right notes, but I think it is a C sharp diminished over a D pedal, and if not, whatever, he did it somewhere else, I'm sure. I'm using the language that I use all the time in talking about these things. And in a minute, I'm gonna show Abraham's piece and just talk a little bit about his harmonizations. I don't want to put words into his mouth, and I don't want to complicate my setup here by worrying about bringing other people on today. But I want to point out that the harmonies in the piece that we're working on for the challenge is essentially a lot of the same harmonies. But I'm going to keep playing here because I want to show you the one other thing. And there's the bridge, and going to the 4 chord, and then the 1, and now another secondary dominant, 2, this dominant 2. Right, that's the bliss, right? So, right there. What is this chord? This is a B flat minor 6. I'm in the key of F. That's my minor 4 chord. You all hear me go on and on about it. It was in that Liberace tune we just heard that we've been looking at the last couple of weeks. That minor 4 chord, super powerful. And when I play it as a minor 6th chord, notice that 6th, the G, if I put it in the bass, now it's G half diminished. So 4 chord as a minor 6th chord and 2 chord as a half diminished chord, largely the same chord. So it's all about borrowing this note that's not in the key, right? Normally our 2 chord would just be minor and our 4 chord would be major. It's moving that scale degree 6 to scale degree flat 6 that creates both of those chords there. So again, let's keep that in mind. And then I'll just play it out. And then I put in more secondary dominants. So just more secondary dominants. All right, so that is my saxophone quartet arrangement of that piece, and it's using this language. And so if you paid attention, if you took my workshop that I did, the How to Create a Great Chord Progression, or if you've taken my harmony course, or if you've just been paying attention to these music master classes, you hear me talk about these same elements over and over again. So I want to summarize them. It's diatonic chords, because most of those chords were just in the key of F. It's secondary dominants. That's things like G7 instead of G minor 7. G7 resolving to C. Or A7, G7 resolving to C. Or A7 resolving to D minor. Those are chords that are not in the key of F, but A7 is the 5 chord in the key of D minor, right? It's giving a chord its own 5 chord. So diatonic chords, secondary dominants, these diminished approach chords, or these diminished chords that resolve by half step. Diatonic chords, secondary dominants, diminished approach chords, and borrowed chords, like that minor 4 chord. We call it a borrowed chord because F major doesn't normally have a minor 4 chord, but F minor does. So we're borrowing it from what's called the parallel minor. You're in F major, we're borrowing that chord from F minor. These are the 4 pillars of harmony. Now, I could add two more. Yes, there's Neapolitans. Yes, there's augmented sixth chords. But these are more uncommon outside of some very specific uses. Jazz musicians love that augmented sixth chord. We use it as a tritone substitution. We use it a lot, but our basic harmony is these four chords. The Neapolitan is kind of rare, is only used rarely no matter how you look at it. Those four pillars, I cannot stress how important it is to really have a sense of those pillars. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the chord progression that we're working on here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it to the key of F. Okay, so we can follow it a little closer to what we were just looking at. So I'm going to move this thing to the key of F. All right. Now, what is this chord right here? So these chords are all in the key: F, A minor with an E in the bass, D minor. And then those are all just diatonic in the key of F, right? But now, G minor 7, flat 5. This is that G half diminished chord, or we could see it as B flat minor 6. That's a borrowed chord right there. That's exactly that thing. It's that fourth pillar there that I constantly love to talk about. And then we have exactly that chord progression, that one chord in second inversion to 5 to 1 that we just heard in the Carson Cougar song, right? So now the next phrase is also the 5 chord, but then we have a series of secondary dominants. We have D7, which is not in the key of F, but the D7 leads to G nicely. And G is not in the key, but it leads to C nicely. Now, we don't get to the C right away, though, right? He throws in another one of those borrowed chords and another one of those second inversion 1 chords. But it's still all about this G going to that C. It's just being delayed a little bit. So this could have just been that, but he just wanted to put in those borrowed chords in there because they're so beautiful. And I think they fit the original melody. Remember, he wrote these chords by taking a melody from a Handel oratorio, reharmonizing that melody, and that's where these chords came from. So the other thing, though, that I want to point out about this is he's using inversions here in a really lovely way. Ooh. Like, just follow the bass line here. Da, 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 and then ba, da, da, nice stepwise motion, right, by using those inversions. Then ba, da, so he's using inversions to make these chords connect smoothly. And this came up, I was talking about this in the office hours that I do with the All Access members on Tuesday, and we talked about these inversions, and the observation that I make is, well, these inversions make sense when the chords are moving this quickly. If they're moving 1 per beat, even at a slow tempo, that's still fairly quick to move these things. If I were to make a jazz thing on this, I probably wouldn't try to play each of those chords only 1 beat. I'd be looking at like at least 2 beats, maybe even 4 beats. So I'm going to just do a version of this where I improvise 4 beats per chord there, okay? Making it some sort of bluesy sort of thing, right? So, all right, Dave, have fun at the concert that you're going to. So this idea that I'm playing a whole measure of each chord, yeah, because this style of putting 1 beat per chord, that makes sense if you're writing a chorale, if you're harmonizing each note of your melody. The original melody was something like this. Wait a minute, did it start on? Yeah. that was, I think, the original melody, the Handel melody that he started from. And again, we haven't found it. I'd still love to know. A couple people said they recognized it and they've heard it at services or performed it. I would love to know the original melody for this. I mean, I know the melody because Abraham sent it to me, but I would love to actually, see it in the context of the oratorio at some point, just because I'm curious. But in any case, that style of harmonizing, that style of harmonizing one chord per melody note is part of the chorale style, but it's certainly not the only style. It's a very specific style. A lot of melodies are built more on the idea of several melody notes over a single chord. And for whatever reason, the example I used of it, because it's always the only one that comes to mind, is really play the piece, right? But bum, 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 3 melody notes. Then bum, da, da, dum. Again, 3 melody notes over a single chord. And yeah, a lot of pieces are going to be like that. Several melody notes over a single chord. And the chords typically change on a fairly regular basis of every measure, every 2 beats or so. So that's kind of what I did. And the point that I wanted to make when I'm bringing back to my point about inversions is which piece? The one I was just playing? This is Mozart Sonata in C. It's like K 453, 257. I don't know, some 3-digit number, but it's Mozart Piano Sonata in C. And it's sort of one of the more familiar, the Tweety Bird Sonata, because I'm pretty sure it gets used or at least parodied in Tweety Bird cartoons, because I was associated with Tweety. I'd actually like to know if that's literally true or if I've always just imagined that. So anyhow, the point I want to make about these inversions is, when I was improvising just now, I was still using the inversions. I went. For whatever reason, I'm in this mode of, since I just heard that saxophone quartet thing, I'm in a vibe of that style. But I still play those inversions because they're nice inversions. But one thing I would observe is you don't need them. The inversions are more crucial the faster those chords move, because you don't want your bass singer to be going, you don't want to have to be following the circle of fifths every beat like that. Bum, 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 no, bum, 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 bum. It's a lot of jumping compared to what's actually in there. I think I actually sang those roots correctly. But I don't know why I didn't just play them, because it's fun to sing is why I didn't. So the inversions are great, and they smooth out that bass line, which is important if they're moving that fast. But if you're playing a whole measure there's no reason you couldn't put all these chords in root position. It would still work quite well. Now this chord is the only exception. Like I played this as a B flat minor 6, so I put B flat in the bass, but I played all the other chords in root position, and then A, and then, yeah, see, this is a fun chord progression to improvise over, actually. But it doesn't matter that the bass is now moving because it's got all the time in the world. And if you think about it, like look at my saxophone quartet arrangement. The bass, this baritone sax, isn't just playing whole notes. He's going boom, ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, bum, boom, bum. And first of all, baritone sax can jump better than a vocalist can. It doesn't matter. But I'm using some stepwise motion, and I've got little bits like this little thing here. I have all these little lines, right? And so I could actually play this piece, and I don't really know how to pronounce it, Maus, or I'm just going to kind of phoneticize it a little bit. Let me get it back and get my chat back. So I could play like a walking bass, and again, I'm putting my jazz stuff. So see you, Heis, and thanks for dropping by. So my point in doing a walking bass isn't to like make people think about this as a jazz piece, but it's to point out the idea that if you've got 4 beats to kill from chord to chord, the idea that you need to connect them smoothly goes away because your bass probably isn't sitting still. So I can walk from that F, or B flat, and then F over C. Oh yeah, I started to make the point that F over C, yeah, it really is conceptually a C chord. It's a C chord with some stuff in it, right? So I think of that not as an F chord. So even if I'm playing roots everywhere else, when I see this thing, when I see that thing, I really think of C as the root. It's just a C chord that has some extra little motion. It's a funk thing. It's totally this idea of using the 5 chord and then using those sorts of motions where in classical terms we call that one when you do this, starting on a chord, going up and come back, that's called a pedal or a neighboring 6/4 chord. So F over C means literally, no, it's not an option. It means an F chord with a C and a bass. It is basically the chord that I would normally notate as 1/6/4. It is an F chord in second inversion. F chord with C in the bass. Same with this chord here. It is G flat minor 7, flat 5 with D flat in the bass. These slash chords, the thing that comes after the slash is a bass note, is what it is. So yeah, thanks for asking, because yeah, you don't want to be laboring under false impressions of what this is. It is just a way, when we use chord symbols, of specifying inversions. That's all it is. So yeah, if you're going to play, so I could play that same like improvisation. Again, it won't be the same improvisation because it was improvised, but I could improvise over that with a walking bass. Now, once I hit that C for a couple beats, I'm pointing at it, but you're not really seeing that. I hit that C, it makes me want to just kind of rock back and forth on that C rather than walk around, because, I don't know, something about this feels like I just want to land on that C and hang there. That's me. But anyhow, the point is, I got 4 beats to get from that F to the A, so I can walk there, and I can walk anywhere in 4 beats, right? I can walk from F to G in 4 beats, or I can walk from F to A in 4 beats, or I can walk from F to B flat in 4 beats, or to C, right? Or to D. Right? You can always walk to any chord and take 4 beats. That time I took 4 beats just to get to E. So you can take as long as you want to get from one root to the next if the bass is moving. And yes, this is a jazz walking bass line, but it's the same thing if you're Bach and you're writing counterpoint. If you're writing a fugue or anything that involves real counterpoint, that bass voice isn't just going to be hanging on that F chord for 4 beats while everyone else gets all the 16th notes. No, they're all going to get the 16th notes. That's how this stuff works. So yeah, the bottom line is here, if you want to write a chorale, then keep to the 1 chord per beat, or 1 beat per chord. Keep to that and keep the inversions. But if you're looking at writing a different kind of style than that simple 1 chord chorale style, I mean, it's deep to write a good chorale. I don't mean to like say, oh, it's simplistic or something, but conceptually it's 1 note per chord, and every theory textbook in the world shows you the kind of rules for how to do that. So if you're going to do that, by all means, keep these chords as they are with these inversions as they are. But if you're at all thinking of doing something any different from chorale style, I would encourage you to consider expanding that to 2 beats per chord or even 4 beats per chord, doubling the length of everything. And in that case, maybe you don't need all those inversions. Maybe you keep some of them, but not all of them. That kind of thing becomes totally up to you. So, I mentioned a few other things that I want to talk about here, and I'm going to talk about one of my things next, and then we'll jump over to the round robin after that. So the thing that I wanted to show you next is, I talked about my piece Pie Jesu, and that I developed for my counterpoint course, and I've showed this before. I've played it before with the MuseScore playback. But I've also told you that I managed to get my students to come in and record on BandLab. And so when I did this on BandLab, let me actually bring up BandLab just so you can see a little bit of what we're going to be looking at here. I'm going to actually not pick the final version here. I want to show you one of my individual submixes here. Let's see, which one is this? That's the alto mix. So if I think my alto is not quite loud enough. I'm going to increase it. But the alto mix, I have two people singing alto, and I had each of them sing on like two tracks. So like here's a little bit of just the altos. And now, the second phrase, I switched to a different track on doing that so that I didn't have to worry about whether the notes overlapped, right? Because sometimes there's like just, I would have them go just until they ran out of breath and then start where they left off. And rather than worrying about clipping one note off or clipping off the beginning of the next note, I would just alternate tracks. This is kind of a recording technique worth knowing. But the point is, I recorded everyone these sort of individual things here, and no one heard each other. No one heard each other's parts. They all just recorded their own parts. And they recorded it while listening to the MIDI generated part. So they would hear that in their headphones while they were recording, right? So I recorded this, and I got a couple altos, I got like 3 sopranos, I got like 3 tenors, 3 basses, including myself, and a couple people saying multiple parts, like one guy saying both tenor and bass, someone else saying both alto and soprano. So I ended up with, a fairly full version of this thing. And so I'm still... I put it out for you guys. If anyone wants to contribute a track, go for it. I gave you the link. It's there in the community. And I've got one of my students at Regis she was sick the day I was doing the recording. And so now, she's going to try to do it herself, but that means figuring out BandLab on her own. But she's really bright and really motivated. And I'm looking forward to getting a submission from her, hopefully. And then my siblings, my brothers are great singers, and my sister loves music like I do, and I'm going to get her to sing if she doesn't know that, but I'm going to see. So anyhow, I'm going to play for you what I have. I won't call this a completed version because I still got some more voices that I expect will come in, but just from my Regis students and me, it's quite full. I've got all 4 parts covered reasonably well. I think my alto's a little too low in the mix, but anyhow, let's follow along here because I went and did the whole synchronization where you upload a video to YouTube and then synchronize that YouTube with the score on MuseScore.com so that we'll be following the score here on MuseScore.com, but hearing the real audio playback. So let's check that out. Yep, there you have it. That's what's possible to do through collaboration. You know, that was the thing I was talking about the last week or two, was the different ways of collaborating. And yeah, BandLab is really useful because it allows, like I used it, you know, I just recorded everyone onto my computer. So I could have used Audacity. I could have used any traditional type of recording software. I could have used, you know, Pro Tools or whatever, traditional digital audio workstation or audio recording software onto my computer if I'm in person with them. But because you know, like my brothers are in Florida and in North Carolina. My sister's in Florida. That one student who's maybe going to record for me is in Utah right now, I believe. And a couple of people that I know have checked out the project at least are in Great Britain somewhere. I always forget, Dave. Are you in Dave? Well, Dave left, but he's either in Scotland or Northern England, and I can never remember. Northern England, though, I think. And Rod, I saw that you had joined in the project. Not sure if you're going to try to contribute a track, but you're welcome to. And you're in Australia, right? So yeah, and so the idea of combining these things to create these virtual choirs is like really took off during the pandemic, right? It was a thing. But Eric Whitaker, someone who had been messing with that idea just as a community building project pre-pandemic, at least I think that's true. I think he'd been doing it before everyone was doing it. But yeah, it's a great idea then to be able to record things remotely in different locations and combine them. And there's a lot of ways of doing that, but a lot of ways of combining tracks recorded in multiple places, but BandLab kind of does a lot of that work for you. And so it's really a great tool because if you follow that link that I posted there in the community, it's going to take you right to this. It's not going to be the Alto mix. It actually takes you to an older version where, what do I have? I have one alto and one soprano and me, I think, or something. I don't remember what's there exactly. I think I also have me trying to sing tenor on it. I don't even remember. But because there's all these different versions of the thing. But then you record your track, and then we can combine them, or you build on each other's. There's a lot. BandLab allows for a lot of that sort of stuff. So I'm going to be probably using it some going forward, and we'll probably pick projects to say, hey, here's a composition that someone wrote that is worth actually putting a collaborative recording together. So that's something to be looking forward to. Probably we'll only do that with like pieces that, you know, well, we'll see how it all works. But I've got all sorts of ideas for how, you know, how I can be doing things and what sort of things that I can do to help everyone learn and help us all learn together. So just be on the lookout for things. But yeah, you're always welcome to try to drum up, you know, people to help you record your own music anytime you like. So yeah, I thought so about the Eric Whitaker before COVID. But you know what? I'm so bad with dates. It's like I like can't remember now. You know who? You know, where was I living when this happened or whatever? Sometimes I think something was 2 years ago and it was really 15 years ago, or vice versa. I'm bad with time like that. So speaking of collaboration, then the thing that I want to kind of wrap up here with is, well, first I want to make sure that it is the last thing I want to talk about. Yeah, it's the round robin. So I'm going to jump over here, and William, if you're still around, why don't you tell me, and again, I'm not like in a good setup right now to be trying to bring people on to talk. I probably could, but there's enough variables right now that I probably won't. But I want to know which is like the most recent submission. Like Sora, I believe I saw that you had done some work kind of combining things. And so I'm going to make sure I grab that version to look at. But I also am going to look at other versions that were built after that. So looks like Trevor fixed something there, and this version I'll download here. Because it's that way. Dave added some dynamics. Let me see if that's the most recent version. So here's a version going back to the opening. So yeah, there's all sorts of different things going on in this. So I'm just going to play like a couple versions of things. All right, here's Sora from 5 days ago. And yeah, I just love all the different stuff going on, and then here's, oh yeah, this is the one that I knew I hadn't seen yet. Is people were commenting on this one as being significant, and I definitely want to check out that version. All right, so use this version as the latest from 2 years ago, and all I have to do is click the link. Oh, but it's private. Sorry, I can't do that. So can't get that one. So but I can certainly load one of the other versions. So yeah, and unfortunately school has been kicking my butt too, but luckily 2 days ago I turned in grades. I'm done with school, which is why I was able to come into my wife's school today and watch the school productions, which is great, but it means I'm still, right, a little discombobulated. So I'm going to bring in these couple of pieces here just to check out a little bit of what's going on and just see what's happening. So I'm just going to hit play and see what we got. Nice. Yeah, love what's going on in that version there. Some really great stuff. And I'm just going to like be checking things out. And this one's like nice and labeled. So let's see what this one has going on. Whoa. All right, very, very cool. And yeah, definitely would be a cool project for a collaborative recording so we can hear some real instruments here. So yeah, now I see the part that I think Dave said something like, whoa, that made me sit up and take notice. And yeah, that the dramatic change that happens here, let me just talk about that briefly. We're in the key of D, right? And then a G chord. And now suddenly we are in a C minor key. Although, and Trevor, if you're around, you'll have to tell us, you're way too careful for me, unless this was the thing that was in the version. No, you just said it was about the clef. And yeah, so instead of using the bass clef, the clef that I always recommend for viola, if you don't want to have to read alto clef, and I include myself, is I generally recommend, and I have no idea what I just did, so I'm going to undo that. I probably added a clef change at some weird random place. But right at the beginning, I'm going to change to this treble with the 8 below it. This, then you read it as treble clef, but it's read an octave below. This fits almost perfectly with alto clef. It's only one step different. So it's it doesn't push things as far down as or as far up, or whichever way you want to think of it, as bass clef would. But it makes it more readable. So in any case, my observation, Trevor, is you know what you're doing, and I'm quite sure you knew that you were creating that. Oh, no, you're not. So I'm wrong. But yeah, you are, because you've got the E naturals here. So let me make sure I'm not lying about anything, that I didn't mess anything up. No. Okay, so yeah, what happens is there is clearly a C minor chord there, but it doesn't stay C minor, because then we get E naturals. Wait a minute, what? Oh, there's a C sharp. That's what I'm hearing. So that might have been an accident. That I can't say. That one you might have to answer for us, Trevor, if that C sharp in the viola was deliberate, because we have what's essentially a C minor chord. We have C going to E flat, right? Right, so it's all about C minor there, but right, it's a very polytonal thing going on, unless that clef messed something up that I'm not comprehending properly. But that's what it sounds like, right? That bum, that E natural against that C minor, it's there in the audio. That's what made us stand up. So assuming that those weren't just some typos, this is some daring stuff. It's taking us, not only is it taking us outside the world of D major, which has two sharps, right? Everything else that's been going on in the piece is all related to D major. It's all either diatonic, or when accidentals come, they're one step away on the circle of fifths. So in other words, this C natural here is just there taking that C sharp down to C. The A sharp that shows up here is there to tonicize the B minor, which is just the relative minor of D major. So we haven't really changed keys. We've just borrowed from the relative minor here. So the accidentals here are all pretty safe as far as that goes. Here's D sharp, which is tonicizing E minor, which also E minor is one of the related keys. So all the accidentals here are all pretty, standard fare until, and even through Trevor's first part here, where he kind of moves it to G, that just requires some C naturals, right? But this section here is out there, right? And now we're in B flat major, right? So that C minor chord that we heard wasn't even about the key of C minor. It's more about setting up a transition or modulation to B flat. So I want to see if, yeah, so I don't see a, thanks for dropping by, William, and good luck on your math test. And so yeah, it'll be interesting. I know Trevor's comments in there talked a little bit about what was going on. I've done some crazy modulations, don't fit the style. So yeah, these 4 bars don't feel like Beethoven to me, because it would have felt more like Beethoven if that had just been a C minor. But it wasn't, right? It's this whole crazy C minor, but with this superimposed on it. C sharp, B flat, G, and E, with also the E flat. So it's like these chords together. It's very polytonal, quite dissonant, in a way that, yeah, like Dave said, makes you sit up, take notice. But now that we're in B flat, it's more believably Beethoven. And then modulating back kind of closer to where we started. So, because it ends on an A chord in first inversion, so basically the 5 chord back in our original key, which is a pretty extreme modulation, kind of extreme even for Beethoven, but maybe not so much for Chopin. It's definitely got that kind of romantic era sudden modulation aspect, but that one section is just way beyond that. This is more Bartok or Shostakovich, or someone coming from a late 19th century, early 20th century kind of mindset is where that comes from harmonically. So I've talked about a whole bunch of things. We've looked at a lot of stuff here. I've had fun. Hope you've had fun. And I'm having fun being here at the school. I'm looking forward to 3 more shows. So far they did Music Man, a production of Music Man, a little reduced for 5th graders version of Music Man, and then a reduced version of Annie, which, yeah, I was bawling my eyes out the whole way through. And then Schoolhouse Rock, and next, then the younger kids are next. So that was like third, fourth, and fifth grade. After lunch will be kindergarten, first, and second grade. So those will be some more kiddie-oriented shows. Which I'm looking forward to a lot. So one of the purposes of me bringing, I wanted to be here for the shows and said, well, I'll just broadcast them here. But having the kids sing and talking about that, I just want to talk about just the power of music, right? That it's about bringing people together, whether it's about bringing them together from different parts of the world to record together in Band Lab, or about bringing them together to all sit here on these risers that are off to the side and sing and put on a show, or if it's about collaborating on a piece like this, or working on a challenge, all working on variations of the same idea in your own corners and then comparing notes later. This idea that, music is a collaborative venture, and that's part of its purpose, is to, reach people, to communicate with people. So I always love finding opportunities to do that, to talk about that. So, end of soapbox. I will now get going and have some lunch myself and get ready for the next series of shows. So, again, thanks everyone for being here, for hanging here and checking out all the stuff that I'm talking about, and hopefully learning something along the way, hopefully having something to listen to enjoy along the way. Next week, I will be back in my own actual office, which you haven't seen me in. Well, you see me in it for the cafe, but not for the master class, but that's not at my keyboard. So anyhow, I'll be back to my official real setup that you haven't really seen in a long time. Hope you have a good week. Keep working on music, work on the challenge, work on the collaborations, work on whatever you want to work on. I'm looking forward to sharing your music, talking about it, learning together more next week. So thanks a lot, everyone, and see you next time. As soon as I find my window again. I'll just keep talking while I find my window. I bet it's this one. All right, everyone. See you later.